In my opinion, Hyperspace Mountain is one of Disneyland's most overrated offerings. It's a complete downgrade to the original Space Mountain ride experience, and it's nowhere near on par of the permanent Star Wars attractions, including Rise of the Resistance, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, and of course, Star Tours right next door. Before we get started, please like this video, please leave a comment down below, let me know what you think of this overlay of Space Mountain, and of course, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. The push for 10,000 subscribers is on. At the time of this recording, we have 8,000 subscribers, and I'm very grateful for all of you. Thank you so much for your support, and I'm trying to keep this channel growth moving. Thank you so much once again. Hyperspace Mountain is actually the second, or I guess third generation of overlays for this version of the attraction. Ghost Galaxy was the original, and Disney has since retired Ghost Galaxy. This may not surprise you at all. I'm not a fan of Ghost Galaxy either. I only rode it a handful of times, so I don't miss it that much. I know a lot of people do, but honestly, having 2 annual overlays for the same attraction is kind of a lot, so I'm glad that it's just one these days, so the original Space Mountain can stay open for longer. Disney used to bring back Hyperspace Mountain on an irregular basis, but recently it's been an overlay in April and May. May, of course, is Star Wars month, so it makes sense from that regard. But in terms of ride overlays, Hyperspace Mountain is towards the bottom of my list. There are plenty of other examples at this resort of better ride overlays. But let's dig into this ride experience. When you first walk up to Hyperspace Mountain, the first big difference that you're going to notice is that they covered the Space Mountain sign with the Hyperspace Mountain lettering. The logo is pretty cool with like the light speed imagery within the text, so I do appreciate that. And the signage itself does look pretty permanent, which is kind of funny because it is just an overlay. But other than that, the queue experience is absolutely identical to the original Space Mountain. Aside from the safety videos, instead of just having a generic Space Mountain cast member, they have Admiral Akbar walking you through the safety information and how it's a mission for the rebel cause, all that jazz. This year I noticed that they gave the cast members new costumes specifically for Hyperspace Mountain. I don't know if I've never noticed that before because I'm oblivious, or if I've never noticed that before because it's new this year. So I thought that was interesting. That being said though, it's just kind of like a generic black t-shirt, so the OG Space Mountain costume is definitely cooler in my opinion. My strategy for Space Mountain is to always hit it last. I get in line for this attraction right before the park closes because the line for this roller coaster absolutely sucks. I made a video dedicated to the top 10 worst lines to wait in at Disneyland, and in my opinion, Space Mountain is number 1. It's terrible. It moves so slow, pretty much just a massive cattle pin. There isn't that much theming. There's eerie music that's kind of off-putting and unsettling. Disney gives away way too many lightning lanes for Space Mountain, for any version of Space Mountain, and obviously that includes Hyperspace Mountain. So when you hit the ride right before closing, there's no more lightning lane guests, so they churn through the standby line really quickly. At the time of this recording, I wrote it 2 days ago using this strategy. It was posted at like a 50-minute wait, I believe, and it took like 25-ish. They do inflate wait times at the end of the night, especially for Indiana Jones. That's probably the most egregious offender. Sometimes they'll be posted at 40, 50, 60 minutes after the second Fantasmic show ends, and it's really a walk-on. So keep that in mind whenever you're going to Disneyland. Being there at night is always one of my favorite times to be in the park. Disneyland is magical after dark. Some of the lighting in the station is a little different, which is pretty cool. But other than that, it's the same room. I love the restraints on this version of Space Mountain. They're very minimal, which is pretty cool. Once you sit down, you're gonna pull forward. They'll check those restraints. You'll sit in front of their tower for a moment. Once you're dispatched, you're gonna turn right and go up that first lift hill, which is when the Star Wars music kicks in, which low-key, that is pretty exciting. Overall, one of my biggest complaints about Hyperspace Mountain is that the music is nowhere near as good as the Space Mountain music, which was literally designed for this layout. So just chopping up different sections of Star Wars music and throwing it onto this attraction, which had a designed soundtrack specifically for it, is not for me. Like, I love Star Wars music as much as the next person, but the music that was designed specifically for this layout is the best fit for this layout. I don't think that's that big of a hot take. They actually updated these lights very, very recently. The old Hyperspace Mountain used to just have you sit in darkness for this entire tunnel, but these new lights like flash like a yellowish bluish color, which is kind of bizarre, but it is definitely better than nothing, which is what it used to be. So I appreciate the upgraded lights. They were broken for way, way, way too long. So I'm glad they finally fixed them. And I believe this is the first year with these lights running on Hyperspace Mountain. You go up the second lift hill. This is the one with the screens all around you. One of the characters says punch it, which is kind of fun. And then obviously you see the lights jump into light speed, which is really cool. It's an awesome visual. The thing is, it does kind of suck that you're moving at like 2 miles an hour when you're jumping into light speed. When you come out of light speed while you're still going up the lift hill, you see a bunch of TIE fighters whiz by you. Then the Imperial March starts playing, which is pretty cool. That first turn in the Space Mountain show building is always really impressive. It always just amazes me how dark it is in there, and the music does play a big role in like how awe-inspiring it is. Obviously that's less effective with the Imperial March playing. That first left turn will throw you into the third lift hill, and this is probably one of the weaker moments of Hyperspace Mountain. The OG Space Mountain has a big countdown, which like really builds the anticipation. It gets me hyped. But the third lift on Hyperspace Mountain is kind of lame. Like, the music is tame. You have a view of a Star Destroyer. There's a lot more projections for Hyperspace Mountain than for the original Space Mountain, which in my opinion is a downgrade. One, because the quality of the projections themselves is not great. Like, they do look kind of bad at some points. Like, I'll point out certain examples of them looking awful. And also, the projections bring more light into the show building, and I prefer Space Mountain to be as dark as possible. I don't want to see anything. That's when I think Space Mountain is at its peak. So it is what it is. I believe these projections were meant for like galaxies, like stars, like objects that are supposed to be far, far away. Not like physical spaceships like a Star Destroyer. So it does kind of look a little goofy. It's also being projected on the ceiling of Space Mountain, which is at an angle. So I feel like that also kind of warps it and makes it look a little strange. The next projection is just as bad. It's 2 X-Wings also on the ceiling for Space Mountain. And it's supposed to look like they're flying right next to you, but you can obviously see that they just stop while you blow right by them, and then they like turn off to the right. They also look a little distorted. It's just not a great visual. It's kind of cheesy in my opinion. Like, I am down bad for a full-scale Star Wars roller coaster. Like, Cosmic Rewind at Epcot is one of the most popular rides Disney has ever built. So I think a full-scale immersive Star Wars roller coaster for Galaxy's Edge will come at some point in the future. And then when that happens, they can stop doing this crummy overlay of Space Mountain. But I brought that up because, like, if they had like physical X-Wings props like around you, that could be so cool. You can feel that energy, but this projection is not it. It's pretty bad. Immediately after is a TIE fighter. It has like the same thing where it like pauses and you blow right by it before it turns off. It's also pretty bad. It's also way higher on the ceiling. So it's like, am I supposed to be looking at that right now? Or is that for later? The projections get more and more obvious that you're supposed to be looking at them the further you go into the layout. But these early projections are just kind of like, they're so far away. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of guests don't even notice it, you know? I'm cutting in while I'm editing this video because I got to re-ride this attraction in the process of making this video. And I noticed a projection that was like low-key behind the train during this sequence where it looks like there's nothing going on. Like, I think you can hear the audio for it right here. But I've been riding Hyperspace Mountain for years and I've never noticed it until my last ride. So I don't know if it doesn't work, but regardless, it's very poorly placed. It's straight up behind the train. You have to look backwards to see it. And it's so far away. The entire first half of Hyperspace Mountain, the projections are so far away that it's hard to even tell if that projection is the one that you're supposed to be looking at. Especially when you consider that the hyperspace projection from the lift hill is also in the show building. So you can see it while you're racing around. And that's just low-key not great theming. That's kind of bad show. Like, Disney's all about show. And this entire first half right here, I think I should have been a little harder on it. I think it's really bad. These projections are awful. It's really hard to tell what you're supposed to be looking at. This section right after the TIE Fighter projection is where the music is actually at its strongest, so I do appreciate that. As I said, I do love Star Wars music. It's just not for this layout, man. The next projection sequence is of an X-Wing destroying a TIE Fighter. It happens pretty quick, so there's just not much there. Also, in this upper section of Hyperspace Mountain, you can look down and see a lot of the lasers that you'll see later in the attraction, so that's not great. But I would say this projection is probably the strongest of the ones that we've seen so far. The next projection is the one that you dive under. This is by far the biggest drop on this version of Space Mountain. They do have those green lasers, which is a really cool effect. I do appreciate that Hyperspace Mountain does have like tangible effects outside of just the projections, so it does create a different dynamic. Also, it is a cool near miss. The thing is that the TIE Fighter is very obviously on like a screen of some sort. Is probably one of the weaker projections in my opinion, but the lighting from the lasers adds a different dynamic, and this is also like one of the strongest moments in the Space Mountain layout. So it does have a lot going for it, but still, you know. The next projection is very small. It's a TIE Fighter chasing an X-Wing. You see it for like half a second. Up next is basically the finale sequence. There's a lot of projections and lighting back to back to back to back to back. So it can be low-key hard to keep up with. Like, there was a good stretch in the first half of this roller coaster where it was just darkness. So it's kind of funny that at the end of the ride, it's just back to back to back to back, which I guess does kind of create like a chaotic and exciting atmosphere. Like, everything is happening at once, but it just kind of ends like immediately. It's like, boom, all right. And then you hit the brake run, they take your ride photo, and then boom, you're back in the station and get out. But let's dig through these effects as much as we can. The next one is another TIE Fighter getting destroyed before you turn into another set of those lasers. This one has green and red. You're gonna see 3 very, very small projections of spaceships exploding. They're like tiny because you whip by them so fast. It's not that deep. You see more of those laser lights. You whip by an X-Wing that's doing a flyby. This flyby is much better than the first flyby at the beginning of the attraction. You're gonna see more lasers and then a very, very small projection of a Star Destroyer coming down. But that is mission complete. So like immediately after, you have X-Wings jumping into light speed. They just abandon you, and then you turn left into that final brake run. The lighting does look like the light speed colors, so that is pretty cool. I'm guessing the implication is that you jump into light speed to get back to the Space Mountain station. But you know, it is what it is. So that second half definitely has much smaller scale projections. In my opinion, they are more effective because it's less obvious how poor the quality is of them. But again, they're so tiny. Like, it's very obviously just a small projection. It's not a great effect at all. My favorite aspect of Hyperspace Mountain is those laser lights. Like, that's something that Hyperspace Mountain can claim as its own, and it's by far the most effective effect on the entire attraction. So yeah, in my opinion, this ride experience is pretty underwhelming. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily more popular than the original Space Mountain, because Space Mountain is always like top 1 or 2 longest lines in the park. It's either this ride or Rise of the Resistance. So whether it's Space Mountain or Hyperspace Mountain, you're gonna have to wait a long time to experience this attraction. And that's my opinion on this version of it. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know why you think this ride is the greatest thing ever down in the comments below. Please like this video and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will catch you later.